It was another bitter March evening in Vermont, and Hartwell was buried in snow once again. The drifts came up to your knees, and the wind howled like a ghost between the wooden houses of the small town, home to barely 2,000 people. In a place like this, time seemed to slow to a crawl. Life ran on routine: morning coffee, work till 5, dinner with the family, and the usual gossip posted on the town's Facebook page. Emily Jensen, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher, had just gotten home from a long, exhausting day. Her fingers were red from the cold, snow clung to her hair, and all she wanted was a mug of hot cocoa with marshmallows, a warm blanket, and one single evening free from kids, homework, and the endless pinging of the parents' group chat. Out of habit, she opened the mailbox. It was usually the same boring stack: bills, insurance flyers, and the local paper. But tonight, something stood out. Her eyes caught on a strange, yellowed envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just her name, written in neat, old-fashioned ink. Miss Emily Jensen, Hartwell, Vermont. No zip code, no street name or house number. And yet somehow, it ended up in her mailbox. That alone felt off. A flicker of unease mixed with curiosity stirred in her chest. Still standing in the hallway with her coat on, she tore the edge of the envelope and slid out a small postcard, browned with age. It smelled like dust and something else. Something old but oddly familiar, like the scent of childhood photo albums. The front of the card showed a campfire under a starry sky. On the back, just one sentence: "Thank you for saving my life. John, 1998. Emily's hand trembled. Her heart clenched. John? 1998? That was 27 years ago. She tried to rewind her memory, digging for fragments of that year. School plays, summer camp, hazy snapshots, but nothing solid. She'd only been a kid, 8 years old. Who could she have possibly saved? So much for a quiet evening. She sat on the edge of the couch, the postcard resting on her knees. The TV still hummed with background chatter from CBS News, but she wasn't hearing a word. Her thoughts scattered, her pulse quickened. A mix of anxiety, adrenaline, and something like awe washed over her. This wasn't a joke. The handwriting felt genuine, slightly shaky, but sincere. Someone meant this. Someone remembered her. After all these years, someone believed she had saved their life. But who? She double-checked the envelope. Still no clue. No stamp, no smudges, nothing. Maybe someone dropped it off by hand? But why now? Why March? Why just John? That name was as generic as it gets, like Mike or Steve. There had to be thousands of Johns. She opened her laptop, Googled fire, Vermont, 1998, kids camp. A flicker of a memory passed through her mind. Tents, a fire, yelling. But it felt more like a dream, or maybe an old VHS tape that had been watched too many times. She didn't trust her memory. And yet, something deep inside her stirred. A buried truth, starting to rise. Digging through the bottom drawer of her dresser, she pulled out her childhood photo album. She flipped past birthdays, school plays, park trips, and then she found it. A photo of her, smiling beside 2 girls in t-shirts that read Sunny Shores Camp. Emily froze. There it was. Sunny Shores. The name hit her like a whisper in the room. That was the camp. The one her parents had sent her to when she was 8. That summer, her mom had just started working night shifts at the hospital, and her dad was away on business a lot. Camp was supposed to be a little getaway. And now, decades later, it had come back into her life, through this letter. But even if she had been there, how could she have saved someone? She barely slept that night. Her thoughts spun in circles. Lying under a blanket, pulse throbbing at her temples, Emily felt something she hadn't in years, like a door to her past had cracked open, and someone was inviting her in. And somehow, turning away wasn't an option. By dawn, she was already at the school library. The old computer whirred like a jet engine as it connected to the Hartwell County Times archive. She typed in, Sunny Shores, 1998, fire. Nothing came up at first. Then, her breath caught. July 1998, a fire broke out late at night at Sunny Shores summer camp while campers were asleep. A young boy, 7-year-old Jonathan Miller, was pulled from a burning cabin by an unknown girl. The identity of the rescuer remains unknown. Emily leaned back in her chair, her hands were shaking. It's me, she thought. They were talking about her. She was the girl. And now, 27 years later, the boy she saved had found her. But how and why? Why now? Those questions were only the beginning. What started with a single, unmarked envelope would soon unravel a story that would change Emily Jensen's life forever. Neither she, nor the man named John, could have guessed where that little letter would lead. The next day, Emily walked the halls of Hartwell Elementary like she was drifting through a dream. Kids were laughing. Backpacks thudded against lockers, someone spilled orange juice in the cafeteria, and Mrs. Pratt was ranting again about the copier eating paper, just another typical school day. But Emily's mind was somewhere else entirely. The fire was still burning, not literally, but deep inside her memory. That letter had planted something in her, and now she couldn't just pretend it hadn't happened. Couldn't just go on like nothing was different. Jonathan Miller. The name had become an anchor. There was no photo in the article, but now she had a direction. She typed his name into Facebook, LinkedIn, Google. There were hundreds of Millers, but one profile stood out. Jonathan John Miller, firefighter, Brandon Fire Department, Vermont. Age 35. Emily's heart started pounding louder than the school bell. This could be him. The age matched. And if it was him, the irony was impossible to ignore. A kid she once dragged out of a burning cabin, now saving lives for a living? She clicked his profile. A photo appeared. A man in uniform, sun-kissed skin, warm brown eyes, holding a golden retriever. The caption read, "Her name's Ash, named after something that once changed my life." Emily stared. Ash, as in ashes. He remembered. This wasn't a coincidence. It had to be him. He had sent the letter. She sat there, motionless for a while, just absorbing it. Then she closed the laptop and stood up. She needed to think. Not in the chaos of school, under fluorescent lights and the smell of cafeteria tater tots. She drove out to the lake, which was almost completely frozen this time of year, except for a thin sliver of thawed water near the shoreline. She stood at the edge, staring at the icy stillness, letting memories begin to stir. The smoke, the sirens, screams, a voice, pleading to save his friend. She didn't remember exactly how it happened, just that she was running in her pajamas through the woods toward the cabin, spilling black smoke. She remembered grabbing a hand in the dark, a boy's hand, and then black sky. That was it. Then the hospital, her mom crying, and silence. Like everyone agreed never to speak of it again. Maybe the adults thought it was better to protect her mind. Or maybe they just didn't believe her. That night, she messaged him. "Hi, Jonathan, I got your letter. Was that really you?" She didn't expect a quick reply, but less than 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Emily, I didn't even know if you were real. I've been looking for you most of my life." She sat down right on the floor, staring at the screen. "Why? Why now?" "Because I finally found out who you were. One of the old camp staff passed away last month. His son gave me a box of his things. Inside was a photo, me and you. Your name was written on the back. I knew I had to find you." It felt like something out of a movie, not real life. He'd searched. He remembered. And it wasn't just about saying thank you. There was more in his words. Not obsession, no, but something like purpose. Maybe fate. "I always wanted to understand why you did it. You were just a kid. You could have run, hid, but you went into the fire. Why?" Emily stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the screen. "I don't know. I really don't. I knew someone was in there, and I couldn't leave them behind." They messaged late into the night. Little things, childhood memories, random shared quirks, favorite 90s movies, a mutual love for PB&J sandwiches, but underneath all that, a quiet tension was building. Like the past was clearing its throat, about to speak. Then came the message. "I'm coming to Hartwell on Friday. My shift ends at noon. Can I stop by? I just want to see you. Make sure you're real." Emily stared at those words for a long time, but her heart answered before her brain could catch up. "Yes, I'll be waiting." She had no idea that his visit would set something into motion. Something that would not only drag long-buried memories into the light, but also a truth someone had worked very hard to keep hidden. A secret that had been buried for decades. And somewhere out there, someone was watching. And they already knew. The pieces were falling into place. And once Emily and John discovered the full truth, the past would burn all over again. Friday felt endless. Emily checked the clock every 15 minutes, like a teenager counting down to her first date. The kids noticed. She mixed up the Walsh twins 3 times, and during social studies, she accidentally called Lincoln the first president. The classroom roared with laughter for a solid 10 minutes. But inside her, a different countdown ticked. Not to recess, not to the weekend, but to him. To a moment she'd been both hoping for and dreading. The face-to-face meeting with the man whose life she'd once saved, without even knowing it. At 12:07, her phone buzzed. "I'm here, standing by the front entrance." Emily peeked out the teacher's lounge window. In the parking lot stood a tall man in a fire engine red jacket with a fire department logo stitched across the back. He was holding a thermos. He saw her in the window and gave a small wave. She stepped outside, her heart pounding somewhere near her throat. "John?" Her voice trembled. "Emily," he replied, and just like that, something unspoken passed between them. It was more than recognition, more like time collapsing into a single breathless moment. He was taller than she'd expected, but his face was open, kind. No walls, no masks, a kind of honesty you didn't see much anymore. "I brought coffee," he said with a smile. "Still take it with milk and 3 sugars?" Emily laughed. "You became a firefighter, and you're still out here risking your life with that much sugar?" They sat together on the bench just outside the schoolyard. The spring air was still crisp, but the sun had finally returned after the long Vermont winter, and with it came a strange sense that the world had shifted, subtly but deeply. "Want to know what I remember?" he asked, after a quiet beat. She nodded. "I remember the screaming. The smoke so thick I couldn't breathe. I crawled under the bunk like they told us to, but then someone grabbed my hand. A kid's hand. Small yours. You pulled me out. I thought maybe it was a dream or an angel, but it was you. You were real." He paused, staring off into the distance. "I would have died in there, Emily, and ever since, I've lived a life that never really felt like mine. Like you handed it to me." Emily said nothing. The weight of his words hit somewhere deep in her chest. "I don't know how I did it either," she finally said. "I barely remember. Just smoke and cold. So much cold, even though it was summer." John reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn metal medallion. The edges were dull, the engraving almost faded. "This was around your neck that night. I found it in my box of old stuff. I kept it my whole life. Always thought one day I'd give it back. It's yours." He placed it gently in her hand. Etched into the back, "For courage beyond fear." Emily clutched it to her chest. "This was mine?" she whispered. "Yeah, I don't think you just saved me that night. I think you left a piece of yourself behind in that fire, and now you're finally getting it back." Silence. A long pause where the only sound was their breathing and the wind. Then suddenly John sat up straighter. "By the way, it took more than that photo to find you. After I found it, I started digging. School archives, local records. Eventually I hired a private investigator. He found your school records, your medical file from after the fire, and something weird." "Weird how?" Emily asked, narrowing her eyes. "He said your parents signed a formal waiver after the incident, gave up any claim against the camp. But here's the thing. There's no mention in the documents of you saving anyone. Nothing. Just a note about mild smoke inhalation. That's it." Emily froze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone erased your part in this story. Like they didn't want anyone, including you, to remember what you did." A cold shiver ran down Emily's spine. But who would do that? Could have been the camp. Or someone else. The PI's still digging. He says the whole thing smells wrong. Like someone was covering something up. In the distance, a car horn honked twice. John glanced at his watch. "I've got to get back. My shift starts soon. But I'll be back Sunday. We'll get answers. I promise." They stood. He hugged her tightly, solid, grounding. The kind of hug that says, "Thank you for my life." Then he was gone. Emily stood there with the medallion in her hand, feeling something shift inside her, like a buried memory stirring beneath the surface. Something she hadn't just forgotten, something someone had wanted her to forget. And that evening, after she got home and placed the medallion gently on her shelf, someone quietly dropped another envelope into her mailbox. No return address. Inside, just 3 words, typed on an old typewriter. "Leave it buried." Emily clenched the paper. Someone knew she was digging. Someone was afraid of what she might uncover. But one thing was already clear. There was no turning back now. Sunday morning was deceptively calm. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, and for the first time in a long while, Emily woke up without the jarring sound of an alarm. But with her awakening came a reminder: the envelope. Those 3 words, "leave it in the past," seemed to burn themselves into her mind. Too brief, too purposeful, too personal. She ran her fingers along the edge of the white paper. No logo, no stamp, no trace. Just a threat wrapped in a thin layer of paper. Emily had never been a paranoid person. But right now, everything felt suspicious. The neighbor's dog, unusually quiet, the car parked outside her house, the same one that had been there 2 days ago. She even noticed someone had flipped through the books on her desk, too neatly, but not in her usual order. By 10:42, John pulled up in his truck. He stepped out in casual clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, an old baseball cap, and a folder tucked under his arm. "I promised. Got everything I could dig up," he said as he sat down at her kitchen table. Emily brewed coffee, black as usual, and sat across from him. "Talk to me," she said, scanning his face. He laid out photos, document copies, newspaper clippings. "Here's a list of the kids who were at camp that session," he said, pointing to one of the charts. "You, me, and 6 others, including Justin Barrows, the camp director's son. Doesn't look like anyone got seriously hurt. But there's one thing." He turned the page. There's an article in the Vermont Times from August 1997 about a heroic rescue of a child, but the hero's name isn't mentioned, just, "An unknown girl noticed the fire in time and led the victim out." Emily furrowed her brow. "Why didn't they mention my name?" "That's the weird part." John showed her another copy. 2 days after that article, there was a correction. The information about the rescue was exaggerated. None of the children participated in the evacuation. "That's a lie," Emily whispered. "I was there." "I know you were, and that's what's strange. The detective thinks they may have covered it up." "The reason?" He tapped the photo of a boy on one of the pages. "Justin Barrows. He was in the same room where the fire started. But according to the official reports, he was supposedly carried out by the rescue team, even though, according to his medical records, he wasn't even hospitalized." Emily took the photo. It showed a smiling boy, around 9, wearing a polo shirt and sneakers. Something about his face looked vaguely familiar. "His dad's the camp director, you're saying?" "More than that, he's now the mayor of New Castle, just outside of Burlington. Barrows Sr. went into politics, a pretty big deal in Vermont." Emily shifted her gaze back to John. "You think he covered it up for his son's sake?" "I think he wanted to protect him. Maybe Justin was responsible for starting the fire. Maybe he was playing with matches or a lighter. If people found out, the family's reputation would have been ruined." Emily tried to piece together fragments of that day. Fuzzy memories, smoke, screams. That boy, hiding under a blanket in the corner? She hadn't saved John? "Wait," she straightened up. "Are you sure it was you?" John nodded slowly. "The reports say one child was taken out before the rescuers arrived. That was me. But here's where it gets strange. In Justin's medical record, it says he wasn't injured at all. His name only appeared in the reports later, like they switched the facts." Emily felt her fingers go cold. "They erased me from the story, to save the reputation of the boy who might have started the fire." John opened the last folder. "And here's the kicker. The letter you got? Leave it in the past." Analysis of the font showed it was typed on a rare model of typewriter that was used in Newcastle's municipal office until 2010. There are only 4 of those typewriters left. 3 are in storage. 1 is in Barrows's office. Silence. Just the ticking of the old kitchen clock and the drip of the faucet. "So he knows," Emily whispered. "He knows I'm remembering. He knows you're looking for the truth, and he's trying to stop me." "And that's why you can't stop." John said, "You have the right to your story and to the truth. But if he's guilty, it'll ruin his career, his life." John looked at her seriously. "And who's going to restore yours?" Emily stood and walked to the window. It was raining outside, the spring showers blurring the view. Drops ran down the glass, and she suddenly realized the fear was still there. But it no longer controlled her. She turned to John. "We're going to New Castle, to Barrows, and I'm going to look him in the eye." Late that evening, she checked the mailbox again. Empty. But now she knew it was the calm before the storm. And the storm was coming next. The drive to New Castle wound through twisting wooded roads. flanked by trees beginning to bloom with the first signs of spring. John's truck glided silently over the asphalt, almost as if it could sense the tension in its passengers. Emily sat silently, clutching a folder of printed evidence. The paper was already crumpled from her grip, but she didn't let it go for a second. "Last chance to turn back," John said quietly, never taking his eyes off the road. Emily glanced at him. There was no more confusion in her gaze. "I'm done turning back. I want the truth to look me in the eyes, just like I'm looking at it." As they entered the town, they were greeted by the picture-perfect American suburb. Neatly trimmed lawns, American flags on porches, kids on bikes, the scent of barbecue wafting through the air. Everything seemed so peaceful, almost mockingly peaceful, given why they were here. The municipal building loomed in the center of town. White facade, columns, a plaque reading Mayor Thomas Barrows. Inside, a sterile office with a reception desk and the soft hum of air conditioning. "The appointment's at 2:30, John said. "I set it up, claiming you're a local reporter. Want to go in alone?" Emily nodded. She needed this. Alone. When her name was called, she stood and made her way toward the heavy door. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from anticipation. Mayor Barrows's office was spacious, with large windows and a glass-covered oak desk. Behind it sat a man in his 50s, with a perfect haircut and an expensive suit. He looked confident. Too confident. "Miss Jensen," he said, rising. "Pleasure to meet you. How can I help?" "I think you already know," Emily replied coolly, laying out the printouts, photos, and newspaper clippings on his desk. Barrows gave them a quick glance, then straightened and neatly closed the folder. "I don't understand what you're getting at." "Let me remind you, Pine Shore Camp, 1997. Fire. One child rescued before the responders arrived. I saved him, and you erased me from the story to cover for your son." For a moment, the mayor's face turned pale. His jaw tightened, but he quickly regained his composure. "These are just rumors, Miss Jensen. No official evidence. You were a child. Memory, it's unreliable." Emily leaned in closer. "Then why did I get a letter? Typed on the typewriter in your office." There was a pause. He looked away, then smirked. "You won't prove anything. Even if there was such a story. Who would care? I'm the mayor now, a respected man, and you're just a school teacher playing detective. No one will listen to you." "You're wrong." She pulled a recorder from her pocket. "Someone's already listening. And if anyone tries to harm me or John Miller, this recording will end up in the hands of a Channel 7 reporter." Barrows's eyes flashed with anger, but he stayed seated. "You don't understand who you're dealing with," he hissed. "Those in power have long memories and long arms." "And truth has patience," Emily replied, standing up. "Goodbye, Mr. Mayor." When she stepped out of the building, John was waiting by the truck. She walked over in silence and handed him the recorder. "You got it on tape?" He grinned. "Smart. He's denying everything, but that doesn't matter. Now we know who he is, and if he makes a move, any move, it'll all come out." They got in the truck and headed back. Outside the windows, houses, playgrounds, and flagpoles flashed by. People who didn't know they were living under the rule of a lie. Emily stared out at the road. "You think he'll back down?" "No," John said, "but now he'll be careful, and we're ready." Later that evening, Emily sat on her porch with a cup of tea. She gazed at the stars, trying to restore some sense of peace. Her life had changed. She dragged the truth out of the shadows, even if it was covered in the ashes of an old fire. But somewhere deep inside, a question lingered. What if Barrows wasn't just hiding the truth, but trying to protect his son from something much bigger? John came out onto the porch with another piece of paper. "This just came in the mail. No return address. You should see this." She unfolded the letter. Inside was an old childhood photo. It showed Justin Barrows and another boy. The caption on the back read, "He's not Justin. His name was Ben." Emily went pale. "Wait, this isn't the boy I saved, is it?" John nodded. "Looks like Barrows wasn't covering for his son. He was covering for someone else's identity. Or maybe a dead kid." Emily slowly sank down onto the bench. The world shifted again. Everything she thought she knew was suddenly in question. And now, the truth didn't just seem dangerous. It was deeper than she could have ever imagined. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The letter with the photograph lay in front of her on the table, like a living witness from the past finally ready to speak. The words, "He's not Justin," His name was Ben, echoed in her mind like a bell ringing in the distance. Everything that had seemed almost solved suddenly took on a new, ominous meaning. She got up, rummaging through an old box of childhood drawings and newspaper clippings, the things her mother had once saved from those days. As she flipped through them, Emily stumbled upon a faded picture. A little boy in a green jacket with the words, "Ben, my friend." The date in the corner read July 1997. Oh my God, he really existed. The next morning, John picked her up again. They headed to the local library, the same one where John had once searched for the camp records of Pine Shore. But this time they were looking for something else. Proof of Ben's existence. The young woman behind the counter, Madison, about 25, with glasses and a ponytail, turned out to be unexpectedly helpful. "We've got the camp records here on microfiche from the mayor's office. We have a copy from 1997. But be careful, the archives were partially damaged after the fire." They spent the next 3 hours flipping through the film rolls, images, and articles. Finally, John pointed to the screen. "Here. Look. Camp Pine Shore, July 1997, Group 3B. Names: Kimberly Doyle, Anthony Wegman, Ben Hartley." Emily froze. That name, she recognized it. "That's him, that's Ben. He was in my group, and then he disappeared. And now his name's been crossed out, and his face is Justin Barrows," John finished grimly. Later in the car, Emily spoke aloud, almost as if trying to convince herself. "So Justin died in the fire, and the survivor Ben became Justin. Yeah, it was a swap, a deal. Maybe not even done out of malice. Barrow was powerful even back then. Maybe they figured if they couldn't save their son, they could just replace him. But then, who was the mayor all these years? A liar? A manipulator? Or a father who just couldn't handle the truth?" John exhaled heavily. Maybe both. A little of both. The next morning, Emily went to the elementary school where she worked. There was an envelope on her desk, unsigned. Inside was the same photo, but with a note. "You saved me twice, once from the fire and again from the lies. But the truth won't set you free. It will burn everything. I'm sorry." Her hands trembled. The letter felt like a goodbye, or a warning, or a confession. She jumped up, grabbed her phone, and dialed John. "We need to find him, right now, before he disappears." They went to the mayor's house, but it was empty. No one answered the door. A neighbor said Mr. Barrow left in a hurry this morning in his black SUV with his son. They checked all the hotels, train stations, and flight records. Justin, or Ben, was gone. 3 days later, local news reported, Newcastle Mayor Thomas Barrow is stepping down due to health reasons. His son, Justin Barrow, is also stepping down from public positions. But no one told the truth. Only Emily knew what had really happened. A few weeks later, she sat on the porch again, holding that same letter. John set 2 mugs of coffee down beside her. "Do you think he'll ever show up?" "I don't know," Emily said. "But if he's alive, then somewhere out there is a man who spent his whole life carrying someone else's name. And in his memory, I'm the girl who pulled him from the fire." She paused. "Sometimes I think the truth isn't what sets us free. It's what we learn to live with." John nodded. "But now you know, and that means you're free." Emily smiled. Not triumphantly, not loudly, but quietly, like someone who's finally let go of something they've held onto for years. The flames of the past had caught up with her, but they didn't burn her. She survived.